Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
This is Sangha of the Gay Buddhist Fellowship. At this time we introduce ourselves to one another. You can share your first name or your full name. My name is Hubbard.
Bill.
I'm Bob. Siukan.
Cedar.
Jim.
Gino.
Lucius.
Kay.
Marvin.
Paul.
Richard Head.
Baruch. Uneboski, if you would.
Todd.
Ray. David.
Joe.
David.
Cass.
Jay. Jim. Robert.
Peter.
Cliff.
Barb.
Ray Dyer.
Paul Shepherd.
Don Weaver.
Dear Camarda.
Good morning, welcome. And for the first time, a few folks. Second time.
Second time.
And
Gino.
From where?
San Francisco.
Oh, long distance.
Yeah.
Right. And Bob, welcome Lucius back for all of us.
Lucius is back from Richmond for a visit.
Yeah. Well, it's a delight, as always, to introduce Jim Wilson, beloved teacher of the Gay Buddhist Fellowship for almost a millennia.
A kalpa.
Look at these reformations and incarnations are taking place. Spectacular. He was also the former abbot of the Chogye Zen Center in New York City, and he has studied the Chogye, Fuke, and Soto traditions of Zen. And it is always a privilege and delight to welcome you this day.
Thank you. I'd like to begin with the simple chanting meditation. Some of you have done this before, but it's simply chanting the syllable Ah, breathing in deeply, exhale, chanting the syllable Ah. If your mind wanders, use the cloud of sound as your object of attention. Just observe the sound arising and chanting. So we'll just do that for a few minutes. Okay? Everything is just like this. Everything is just like this cloud of sound. Everything in existence arises just like that cloud of sound. Everything arises due to causes and conditions. Everything is transparent, clear. Everything is constantly changing. Right? And everything is impermanent, like that cloud of sound. Arising, changing, transforming, disappearing. Appearing and disappearing. Changing. Everything is just like that cloud of sound. Very simple, very clear. You are like that cloud of sound. I'm like that cloud of sound. I arise due to causes and conditions. So I am constantly changing. You are constantly changing. All of existence is just like this. No problem. Very simple. So understand this. Understand this cloud of sound. Understand this cloud of sound. Then you understand what the Buddha meant by causes and conditions, what he meant by everything is changing, what he meant by everything is impermanent. So sometimes the Dharma seems to be very complex, very difficult, but it's really very simple, very direct. It's just that cloud of sound. So that's it. That's the graduate course. Any questions? Dharma questions? About it doesn't have to be about that meditation. It can be about that meditation, but any Dharma questions about your practice or about Buddhism. If there are no questions, that's okay. We can share the silence, or we can do some more meditation.
I have a technical question.
Yes.
The mantra Ah is different from the mantra Om.
Yeah.
Do you mind explaining the difference a little bit, please?
My eyes are changing. There we go. I don't really know what, why Buddhism emphasizes the syllable Ah and Hinduism emphasizes the syllable Om. There is a sutra called The Perfection of Wisdom in One Sound. It is the shortest sutra in the Buddhist canon. And the Buddha says to his disciple Ananda, this is the perfection of wisdom. It is just the syllable Ah. Okay. So that's it. So thus have I heard, the Buddha said. It's even shorter than the Heart Sutra. The Heart Sutra is lengthy compared to this one. So there are various explanations that have been offered, but they're not. The sutra doesn't really say, why that sound over other sounds. I is the first letter of the Sanskrit alphabet. So the Ah is the Ah down here. Ah is in father, not Ah is in attention. Okay, so it's and the that letter, when it's placed in front of another word, is a negation particle in Sanskrit grammar. So some people have made a great deal out of this. Much, in my opinion, they erected a huge edifice on something that's really quite simple. But you will find commentaries that say, not this, not this, not this. You're sort of saying, not this, not this, not this. But I actually don't think that's it. In Sanskrit, all sounds are considered to be modifications of the primal sound Ah. Okay. So Om is actually a modification of Ah. As you raise the tongue and close the throat and move the sound forward in the mouth, You start Om, and you end up at the tip of your mouth. So in classical Sanskrit grammar, all sounds are considered to be, all vowels are considered to be modifications of A. So that feeling is so strong in Sanskrit that in Devanagari, the Devanagari script for Sanskrit, you don't write the letter A between two consonants. It's simply understood. You know, and you don't write it at the end of a word. You know, like if it's understood that will be the last syllable. Unless it's another vowel. So in other words, you don't have to write A, but any other vowel you would have to write in Devanagari. And if the last syllable is not A, you have to, if the last syllable ends in a consonant, you have to actually write a symbol that means not A, you know, that it ends in the consonant. See? So my feeling is the A was chosen because it's kind of like primal source. It's a symbol of, you know, primary source, you know, like primary point, you know, like when I say everything in existence is just like this, see, everything is like a modification of this primal nature. You know, like, so that's my understanding of why that particular sound was chosen. You know, like, so is that helpful? Okay. Other questions or inquiries?
I just thought it was kind of pleasant to observe the cloud, you know, at those times when I was taking my breath.
Yes.
You know, and I wasn't in any hurry. To sustain the sound like and I just felt kind of held by the sound, you know, and that
yes.
While we're, I don't know, it was hard to articulate, you know, it was just sort of a sensation that I was there, even though I was taking care of myself with the breath. I felt supported.
That's one of the, what I call gates of sound, this meditation. So when you understand that, you understand that the universe is supporting you in exactly the same way. So all these causes and conditions are sustaining your existence. This is an important insight because normally people feel that they're in conflict with existence, that they're doing what I call they're doing battle with existence. So that is to say that they have to get from existence the little that is available, you know, like, and so there's a kind of a warrior mentality in relationship to existence, and of course the problem with that mentality is that existence always wins in this battle. Like in the end, I mean, for a while you can strategize, but in the end, existence will have its day, you know, like over any exalted plans you may have, you see. But if you begin to realize that moment to moment to moment your existence is being sustained in exactly the same way that cloud of sound is being sustained by all of our voices, then gratitude begins to open in a spontaneous way in your heart. And gratitude is the key to spacious awareness and heart wisdom. It's the golden key to love, compassion, sympathy, and equanimity. And also bodhicitta for those who are following Mahayana tradition. So gratitude is the foundation. But how do you it's not sufficient to say to people, you should feel grateful. Maybe they should, but if they don't, they don't. Lecturing people about how they should feel isn't useful. It will either make them feel anger or make them feel bad. But if you place people in a situation where they can actually experience how existence is a constant stream of blessings, like a dharma rain, then then that begins to open up naturally. Like, oh, like every moment, with every breath I breathe, I'm being sustained, just like that cloud of sound. With every bite of food, I'm being sustained. Just countless blessings rain down on me daily. Like, that's interesting. So,
I like to sing, choruses and come to a resolution at a time at the end, like especially a great big piece of music like the Ninth or something, David's Ninth, or whatever. It's just something so exalting, transcendent. To be part, and to be part of making that sound. And that's sort of how I felt here. It was feeling this way and that way, and then it became just doing it, hearing it, but also noticing the overtones as the sound changed, and a real feeling of just being with. Well, I don't know how to do that.
thank you.
Feeling of being with.
Yeah, feeling of being with. One of the lessons of the gate of sound is that you'll have to, I'm sniffling a lot because when you live in Sonoma County, you're exposed to allergens. So, no, I haven't. The relationship of the individual to the cloud of sound is that we participate, all of us together participate in its presence. But we do not, no one as an individual determines its presence. That is to say, I, Jim, am not deciding that the cloud of sound will have this particular configuration, but my chanting and also my pausing, between breaths, contributes to the overall shape. So that's our relationship to existence. It's not that we create our own reality, but we do contribute to our own reality. And everybody else is contributing to that reality as well. So that is the meaning of interdependence, or what Thich Nhat Hanh likes to call interbeing. So where the nature of things is such that their particular configuration is due to numerous causes and conditions. So who I am is due to numerous causes and conditions which have gone into making me the person I am here today.
There's that practice that regards everyone as our mother.
Yes.
And that may be true in Tibet, but a lot of us don't have good mothers. My mother was a rapist and a pedophile. She was just really horrid and on many virtues. So I feel some aversion whenever I come across that. Everyone is my mother. Of course, it gives me something to work with. I've tried everyone is my father, and that isn't milky enough. With my sense of humor, what I came up with is everyone is my yak, which fulfills my need for sustenance and milk and goodness and everything else. I'm wondering have you ever come across this before? There must be some bad mothers in Tibet.
The classical contemplation on the four immeasurables. One of the classical contemplations is to regard all beings as your mother. And Westerners being Westerners and who they are, a lot of people, say, "Oh, you wouldn't want me to treat all beings the way I treat you." But it's the way you can look at it is that all beings are sustainers of your life. See, sustainers of your life. You see, that's what the contemplation is getting at. It's all beings are contributing to the presence. So when I was doing that contemplation, I found that it was very helpful to make it very concrete, not vague. So as I would wander through the streets and I would look at people, and I would say, oh, that person stocked a shelf, or they changed a light bulb, or they swept a sidewalk, or they, repaired, something or other, they've done something to make my life a little easier. Every single person I meet has, in some way. If it gets too abstract, if you start getting vague, about, well, not everyone I meet is, Kuan Yin or Maitreya, then the meditation starts to fail because people don't measure up to those kinds of transcendental qualities. But if you make it very simple and very down to earth, then the contemplation takes on some vividness. So if mother doesn't work, just say, all beings have assisted me in some way. All beings are sustainers of my life. All beings have made a contribution to my life. And incidentally, as the mind is very clever about here. Suppose you meet someone in the street who you happen to know is nasty, or has voted for someone you dislike. The contemplation is particularly valuable in that context because people are complex. Yeah, it's true that they may have done something that's malevolent, or that you disagree with, or that you really would prefer that they had not done. But it is also true that they have done something in their life to help you. And it's important to be aware of that. It's important to acknowledge the complexity of human beings. So it's good to be able to do that in the presence, specifically in the presence of people you dislike. It's good to enter into that contemplation. It doesn't negate the negative things that people do. That's not its point. Its point is to highlight an aspect of human beings that we normally ignore or don't spend time contemplating. So, Kai, did you?
My question is a sort of fine line between the Buddhist view of the sort of karma and everything comes out of the causes and effects, everything's sort of related, and the fatalistic view of everything is preconditioned. Yeah. I think that I'm making decisions. I think I have free will, but do I really have a free will? Is it just a sort of causes and conditions somehow made my brain to signal certain things to parts of the body, and I just did it? I'm not really sure there's really that clarity of differences.
Yeah, I got, thank you for the question. It's interesting that the question of free will is not one that it arises in a Buddhist context, in a classical Buddhist context, like in India, China, Tibet, even in the these huge treatises that Buddhist sages write. You never come across the question of free will. It just didn't seem to be like an issue for them, but it is an issue for us in the West because of our heritage and and the way we have configured certain things, like you say, determinism versus free will. There's several responses I have to it. At first is the Buddha does not seem to have had a deterministic view of karma. That people, in that sense, he was an optimist, that people can get on the spiritual path. Even people who have really strong negative, done extremely negative things during their lives, it is possible. So one of the things that's interesting to me is that the way the concept of karma was introduced in the West was primarily through the Theosophical Society. Madame Blavatsky was the first one to really write on it extensively in the West. And she made a direct connection between Newtonian physics and karma in her writing. She said, karma is to the ethical realm what Newtonian physics is to the physical realm, and Newtonian physics is deterministic. So it's not surprising that the idea has sort of spread, that the karma is deterministic. But it's ironic that within a few decades of Blavatsky writing that, Newtonian physics was sort of relativized itself. But the idea still, like when you read, say, some of the New Age writers, you still pick up phrases which, if you trace them back, were Blavatsky's. They don't know that, but if you've read Blavatsky, you can hear the echoes, down through this time. But the interesting question is, well, why didn't the Buddha, view this deterministically or fatalistically? And to me, it goes back to his intuition. The primary point, the Buddha really only taught one thing, and that is the deathless and the unborn. See? So if you understand that the deathless and the unborn is constant and always there, permeates all of existence, that there's no separation between one's presence and the presence of the deathless and unborn, then it makes sense that at any time, if one turns to that reality, then that which belongs to the relative realm will no longer have the consuming grip. So that's my understanding of why he thought that liberation was always available, why progress on the spiritual path was always available to people, in fact to all sentient beings, no matter what their predispositions. I mean, there's the famous, the classic case of Angulimala. Yes, Angulimala. People know Angulimala. So that was Angulimala was a serial killer who converted to the Dharma. So Angulimala means necklace of fingers. So he would kill people, and they would take a finger and make a necklace out of it. So it's a very famous, justifiably famous, the Buddhist fellow monks weren't all that enthusiastic about this new member of their Sangha. but the Buddha, basically when the Buddha met him, the guy threatened him, and the Buddha wasn't concerned, and that was unusual, and there was kind of a pause. The Buddha said to him, you don't have to live this way. There is another possibility, and Angulimala did become a monk. I can't remember what his monk's name was, but he did ask the Buddha one time if he now could escape his karma, that is the energy that he had done by his horrible deeds. And the Buddha said, no, you cannot. But when that karma comes back and reappears, you do not have to make any new karma. You do not have to respond to that. So what he's talking about is this. Suppose somebody insults you, right? Okay. So that plants a seed in your mind to get back at them. It might happen right away, but if the opportunity isn't there, if there's a seed in the mind, you're looking for an opportunity to get back, and you do, and then that person gets back. That is samsara. Okay. So suppose somebody insults you, because you did something, you insulted them, before, and so they come back at you, and you simply let that pass through, without comment, without anger, without grasping onto that. Then it's gone, you see. So what the Buddha was getting at was that the Dharma is not a way of sort of sidestepping the consequences of your deeds, but if one enters into that spaciousness of the mind and heart, then whatever appears is okay, and you do not have, and that's the freedom. You see, that spaciousness is the freedom. So sitting in meditation, when we were sitting in silence, maybe an angry thought appears, maybe a lustful thought appears, maybe this thought appears and disappears. So what the mind and body learn is that just because those kinds of thoughts appear doesn't mean that we have to grasp onto them. does not mean that we are not our thoughts. Or the way the Buddha put it is, there is no self in form. Myself is not in form. Form is not mine. So there is no self in thought. Those thoughts are not mine. I do not possess them. I do not own them. So in that spaciousness, there is tremendous freedom, like an equanimity, serenity. So that's my understanding of why he was not fatalistic. In fact, he was optimistic. Otherwise, he wouldn't have bothered teaching at all. Or it would have just been his fate to teach. There were determinists during the Buddha's lifetime. I can't remember the name of the guy. He had a famous metaphor that your life is like a ball of yarn, and it's like letting go of the ball of yarn, and it unwinds, and when it unwinds, that's the end of it, and that's that. And he very, very much disagreed, with that kind of view. Thank you. Other questions?
I think I've asked this before a long time ago, but in relationship to impermanence, it's the way things are. How do Buddhists relate to grief? Well,
how do they relate to grief?
Experience it, or
I think they experience it just the way everybody experiences grief. Like when somebody you love dies, that's the most difficult experience a human being could go through. It's like like a hole torn in the heart. My experience with this is that when there's a hole torn in the heart, the tendency is to shield it, and to try to withdraw from it, but of course you can't because it's internal, and what is needed is to practice the wound of love, and to actually dive into the void that is opening, and when you do dive into that void of grief, then you realize that grief is the grief that every mother has for a child who has died, for every brother whose brother has died, for that grief isn't your grief. It's the grief that all human beings have. So then the heart can expand, and bodhicitta really can blossom, if you practice the wound of love, because then you can understand what people are experiencing, and you can understand what the Buddha meant when he said the first noble truth, that all beings are suffering. That is really true. But you have to be willing to actually dive into it, and that's difficult. That's difficult. So, in terms of Buddhist practice, it's being attentive to that, instead of withdrawing from it. So that would be based on my own experience.
Back to the cloud of sound. In the example here, you told us to do this, and we started to do it. So in a sense, you were a prime mover. But in Buddhism, there isn't any prime mover.
Well, that's really flattering. Thank you. But I can't take credit for it. I didn't invent this, you see, so I'm not the prime mover. That's true. That's one of the differences between the Buddha Dharma and monotheism. That you could say the first noble truth of monotheism is that God created all of existence. Boom. There was nothing, and then there was something. And the Shakyamuni rejected that that idea. Like there's many sutras where he says there is no discernible beginning to this existence. Then there's literally dozens of metaphors he used to illustrate just how incredibly long. Like there's the famous metaphor about the bird who brushes a mountain with a piece of cloth once a year. The amount of time it would take for that bird to wear that mountain down to dust is but a fraction of the time that has come. Or the number of tears you have shed in samsara, like you could not fill an ocean. I mean, an ocean would be just a fraction of the number of tears you've shed in samsara over time, over life after life after life after life after life. So, but like, can either of those views be proven one way or the other? And I doubt it. I doubt that many philosophers and spiritual teachers have tried. And my suggestion is not to get too wrapped up in that. That it's more important to treat other people kindly than it is to know whether or not existence had a beginning, or whether it had no beginning. Because whether or not it had a beginning or no beginning, the teaching of compassion for all beings is still valid. So I regard that as kind of like a secondary issue. It is true the Buddha had a certain view about it. It is true that the monotheistic tradition has a certain view about it. But well, okay, we can agree to disagree and proceed with our practice.
Does Buddhism feel that eventually societies can be perfected on this world, or is it more concerned with individual liberation?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure. The Buddha put a tremendous amount of energy into forming a counterculture, to the dominant culture. He had models. The Buddha was a part of a countercultural movement that was going on at the time called the Shramaneras. And he adapted many of the forms that various Shramanera teachers were using. But it's impressive that the countercultural institution, that is the monastic Sangha in particular, has lasted for over 2,500 years. There are very, very few human institutions which have lasted intact, for 2,500 years. But I believe that his vision of the monastic Sangha was to function as a kind of example, for how society in general should function. Not that everybody should become a monastic, but that the way monastics ideally would relate to each other, that they would come together for counsel with each other, and they would openly share with each other their concerns and their criticisms, and that kind of pattern. My reading of the Vinaya is that he wanted this to be an example for all beings, this kind of relationship. Not everyone shares my understanding of that, but that's otherwise I don't see why he would have put so much energy into forming an actual social structure. If he wasn't interested in using that as an example, why not just go off into the forest or off into a mountain? You could do the meditative program, you could do the contemplations in that kind of context as an individual. There's interesting discourse in the middle-length discourses, the Majjhima Nikaya, where Ananda is about to go off on a retreat, a solo retreat, and he says to the Buddha, the Sangha is half of the Dharma, and the Buddha says, no, Ananda, you're wrong. The Sangha is the whole of the Dharma. And I think that's often quoted. I think the Buddha placed a great deal of weight on how people interacted with each other. So I just spent a year studying the Vinaya, in its various forms, and it's interesting, like a full 1/3 of the monastic regulations, at least 1/3, maybe more, are about right speech, about how to talk to each other and what happens when you speak to each other incorrectly. I was thinking, why was there so much emphasis, why so much? And I think that what he was getting at is that a lot of human problems begin with an angry word, or a misspoken word, it plants the seed, that later grows, and so his understanding was, we really need to work on that. We really need to work on how to speak to each other. I've often thought on the internet that there needs to be some code of right speech, something to communicate to people. How do we communicate together on the internet where we don't have bodily feedback? Where we've all had the experience of posting something and someone responding with "How dare you?" You had no intention of irritating anyone. In fact, you may have been joking. Jokes don't travel in cyberspace very well. But to me, that's a good. Cyberspace is a good example of how a misspoken word or a misunderstood word, can bloom and consume a forum or an online chat room and just become just gobble up all the energy, over something that was really fairly trivial. So that's my response. A lot of people do not agree. Their view is that the Buddha should have been more proactive, with the political structures of his day, and they point to a fairly passive role of Buddhist institutions in down through history vis-a-vis governmental activity. But my defense of the Buddhist strategy is that I think an example is a clearer teaching than a lecture, about how people should behave. And in some ways, as I mentioned earlier, the monastic institution is remarkably successful. 2,500 years. Where. So there must be something about it which has a certain integrity. And I found it valuable to study the Vinaya. There's an awful lot of it which is just incredibly tedious. There's a whole chapter about how long a robe should be, and what kind of cloth can be used, and what kind of dye can be used, and how wide the hem should be, and what happens if somebody sews out a hem that's too wide, and that kind of stuff. Get a job, right? But on the other hand, if you step back from all those details, you sort of take a broad view of. Why did he spend all that energy and all that time? And I think it was he wanted to establish a vehicle for a presentation of the way human beings could ideally interact. So that's how I view it.
Because just to follow up, because he did feel that lay people could practice Buddhism.
Yes, absolutely.
You could have a family.
Yes, absolutely. It's one of the frustrations about the Buddhist canon is the Buddhist canon was preserved by monastics. So they had a natural tendency to preserve what was of interest to them and would support their way of life. So I can't remember who it was, but somebody did an analysis of the Nikayas and what percentage of discourses were addressed to lay people. It's something like 20%. It's like 80% are addressed to monastics. But those 20% that are addressed to lay people are very interesting. And on balance, he must have given more discourses to lay people. But like I say, the task of preserving the Buddha's teaching was given to the monastics. That was their specialty. But there are discourses where the Buddha begins by saying, this is what should be done by everyone, monk, nun, layman, or laywoman. And he's very clear, there's a classic 5 contemplations, contemplations on impermanence, for example, that he recommends for everybody. The Eightfold Path is a path that can be followed by lay people, and one of the aspects of the Eightfold Path is specifically for lay people. It's right livelihood. So the Eightfold Path is a teaching for everyone. It's not a teaching specifically for monastics.
This is a little less technical. I'm always curious about, and it's nobody I know. Well, occasionally, but somebody will say, "I found Jesus," or "I was born again," and "I have found amazing peace." I mean, I've even heard it from people talking about when they've thrown themselves into a yoga practice or something, and there's this amazing transformation of peace. At least they claim that. What is it? What's going on from a Buddhist perspective? What's your take on that?
I think the way I would answer that is, over the years I've become more and more content with the Buddha's 4th noble truth, the truth of the path. And people want dramatic changes. It makes William James talked about this in the Varieties of Religious Experience. That most religious literature which focuses on an individual is of that kind. Where I did this and now I'm transformed. I did that and now I see the light. I was in darkness, but now I'm and it makes very good literature. It has a kind of a novelistic trajectory to it. But the truth is, most spiritual practitioners are what I call plodders, and I absolutely include myself, in that. And we just go forward one step at a time, and after 5 years of practice, we look back and we realize, it does work. I can do this. But from day to day, it's difficult to see the change. So when the Buddha talked about his path, he used very ordinary metaphors, like farmers till the field and practitioners of the Dharma till the heart and mind. Fletchers straighten the arrow and followers of the Dharma straighten their mind, or those kinds of things. So I think, I'll be right with you, I think of the Dharma as cultivating the field of the mind and heart. Okay? So if you are cultivating a garden, it's first you get the soil correct, and then you plant the plants. But the people, a lot of people, it's like wanting the garden to suddenly bloom. You want all those flowers to be up and beautiful. It's not reasonable. And my observation is that people who have that kind of, or talk about having that sudden transformation, for the most part, my observation has been that somewhere down the road they have a kind of fall away from that, and then they wonder what happened. I was feeling so good, it was so wonderful, and now I'm back to those old habits. And the cultivation model of going one step at a time is surer. It's interesting. Sometimes I think what happens to people is, they're cultivating the garden of the mind or the heart, and then this rose blooms, and it's so wonderful, and that's, it's great, but that's just one flower, that's just one moment. There's a wonderful story from Master Dogen, the Soto Zen teacher, where a student came to him and said, I was sitting in meditation and I was filled with this clear light. This clear light filled me from the top of my head to the tip of my toes, and I could see that everything was nothing but this clear light. So Dogen let him go on, and when he was finished, and Dogen said, well, if you sit long enough, that too will pass.
My question was that as human beings, a fundamental part of who we are people that relate, and this just fundamental sense of loving other people. And so, on that same topic, there's a natural sense of devotion that people can have for one another. And, the Christian scripture says our hearts are restless until they rest in God.
Yes.
And there's this whole sense of devotion that brings up a really powerful awareness of the presence of the sacred, so to speak.
Yes.
So with that, I'm just wondering, and being that there's so many varieties of human beings, because different personalities just get drenched in emotion, live out of that emotion space, just reflecting on the Enneagram and the different personality types. You see there's certain personality types that just totally are engrossed in that devotional, and would be drawn to that from a spiritual perspective. So what are the Buddhist traditions that would tend to more cater to those who tend to find themselves more leaning towards devotional aspects of the sacred of Buddhism?
Pure Land Buddhism would be the big one, which is also the first Buddhist tradition to sink roots in the United States. Buddhist Churches of America, is the name of the organization. I pray every day. That's part of my practice. I have six practices I do, on a daily basis. Like contemplation of emptiness, bodhicitta, and prayer. Buddhists in the Orient pray, all of them. Theravada Buddhists pray, Mahayana Buddhists pray, Tibetan Buddhists pray. Prayer is only an issue in the West where a lot of the Buddhists have a secular background and they're suspicious of that kind of activity. I'm not saying that that's wrong. I understand where the suspicion comes from, because a lot of prayer has to do with striking a bargain with God. I'll give 150 to the church and you deliver. Or even smite my enemies because I'm devoted to you. That kind of stuff. And when you're exposed to that kind of prayer, it's natural to want to keep it at bay. But there's a more fundamental, heartfelt sense of prayer for me, and that is, it's a turning to the vastness of existence, and it's a recognition that, like I talked about, the Buddha really only taught one thing: the deathless. Could you put your elbow down? I'm trying to. Sorry. The deathless and the unborn, but the deathless and the unborn is not just a principle that you philosophically deduce. You can do that, like Nagarjuna did that, for example. But it's a compassionate and responsive presence that is ceaselessly assisting all sentient beings to awaken. That's what I pray to. In Buddhism, that's called the Dharmakaya. So in this kind of teaching can be found in the Sutra of Golden Light, and the Lotus Sutra, but it can also be found in Theravada scriptures such as the Udana, where the Buddha says, "There's that which is deathless, unborn, uncreated, unconditioned. If there were not the deathless, the unborn, the uncreated, the unconditioned, liberation would not be possible. But there is the deathless, the unborn, the uncreated, and the unconditioned. Therefore, liberation is possible." But my sense of the Buddha when he said he was the awakened one, he was asked, "Are you a God?" No. Are you a human being? No. I am the awakened one. What is it that he awakened to? He awakened to what I call the presence of eternity. So if you open up to that, then prayer is wonderful, because every prayer you offer is offered into that spacious presence of the deathless and the unborn. So I'm very enthusiastic about that kind of relationship, and I would like to see more of it in Western Buddhism. But I think it will take time for the reason that I mentioned. Like I say, I'm sympathetic with people being kind of wary about that dimension, because most Western Buddhists have a background, they've left a certain tradition in order to become Buddhist, and so there's a kind of a tension of bringing in those elements. But I think there'll be some relaxation about it. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Afterwards, sorry, I've been cut off. Causes and conditions have ceased.
I had the own experience, and my teachers, I'm telling her all about how wonderful it was and how I was, and she said, "That's nice."
Jim, thank you again very
You're welcome.
much.
Thank you.
Also, Jim teaches a weekly salon in Sebastopol.
Yeah. So you can see me if you're interested in my Sebastapol group.
It's time for announcements of the Sangha.
I'm Todd. I'm the host today. Let's see. There's some little pastries up there, and please enjoy those. If you're going to have tea, please wash your cup and put it on the rack to dry. I'll be circulating a Dana bowl. Please give as generously as you can. This donation is $5 to $8 to help put the cemetery and the Sangha. Some people go out to lunch afterwards, and we usually gather for the floor. That's it.
Paul.
There's a steering committee meeting today at 12:30. Visitors are welcome.
Thank you. CJ?
My name is CJ, and I am the potluck coordinator. If anybody wants to open their home up for a potluck, come see me. I believe we have one on July 30 on 17th Street at Lee's place. I say I believe because I've been a couple of weeks out of the loop, and I've got to catch up on my notes.
CJ, thank you very much. Kay?
Yes. First of all, related to our annual retreat for GBF, Jim Wilson has agreed to be the teacher this year at the retreat. So we're looking forward to having more of the wonderful teaching coming from Jim. That's about the retreat. And the date is middle of October 15th through 17th or something like that. So watch out for announcement and registration form, which will be published in the newsletter. Second item is related to the hosting. We currently have 2 vacancies on the hosting team. So if you're interested in volunteering to be a host at our weekly meetings, please let me know. Thank you.
Yeah, and the commitment for hosting is fairly minor. It's
once every 2 months.
Once every 2 months, yeah. Thank you. And Marvin.
Okay. Last week we had our first meeting of the text and video group in Berkeley. At the meeting we selected the August agenda anyway, and we're doing one movie a month, the first Wednesday, and the rest of it is devoted to the text. The movie or the agenda this month is on July 5th. We'll do Happy Endings, our first movie. We hope it's a joyous beginning. and the next 3 Wednesdays in July, we'll be doing the book by Steve Hagen, Buddhism, Plain and Simple. It's nicely done in 3 parts that meet the remaining 3 Wednesdays. And everybody's welcome. See me for details.
Marvelous. Wonderful. Great. I know Clint, and then did you have an announcement?
Well, this is just very brief to follow up on Kay's. I just want to put a plug in for volunteering. If you get something out of the Sangha, the old adage, you get what you give really applies, and this is an opportunity to maybe give back a little bit. So I would encourage people who haven't been volunteering for something to consider that.
Thank you. And then Ray.
There is a printed GBF directory on the coffee table in the center of the room there. Feel free to take a copy.
Great. Thank you for that. And then Don?
3 things. We're now collecting books for prisoners and collecting all sorts of books, especially in good condition, because we have an arrangement now with several bookstores to get an exchange for Buddhist books that they have. If you have any kind of book that that you would like to donate, it should be in pretty good shape, so that we can sort of make the authorities think it's new or close to new. Secondly, the Buddhist Peace Fellowship and some other organizations are going to try to have a vigil on August 6th at Livermore. And if anybody's interested in doing that, talk to me about that. And thirdly, we're also trying, some of us are working towards having a vigil. It might be once a week or some other time like that at some defense installation or something that has to do with promoting more consciousness about the war going on. So if any people are interested in just finding out about how that might happen, if we just sort of planning it.
Beautiful. And Jim, if you would offer us a dedication of merit, if we could stand and take one another's hand.
May all sentient existence be well and happy. May all sentient existence be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May good fortune fill all the days of all the lives of all sentient existence. May all sentient existence dwell forever in the limitless realm of the ever-present peaceful heart and serene mind.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.